question that is often asked by immigration clients and immigration professionals is how to go about proving work experience as a self-employed person. It isn't easy and will require a number of documents that may or may not be available depending on the individual case of a client. Some clients are highly organized or have operated businesses which have an extensive paper record, but other clients, particularly those who own sole proprietorships or may have been in the trades and had a small shop, may not have as many supporting documents or may not keep the same number of documents, financial records, invoices, contracts, and other evidence. So the starting point is to sit down with the client and ask them about their business. Who were the owners? What was the corporate structure? What was the number of employees? The clients that they had? And with that in mind, you can come up with a list of documents that will be available to prove their work experience. Most people will not have all of the documents on this list, but the more that you get, the better. The list includes items such as the following: the registration or incorporation documents. This can include the business license, articles of incorporation, partnership agreements. Mainly, you want to show any evidence that the business was registered and when, as well as any documents showing when it was dissolved or shut down. Tax documents and filings are also extremely helpful, since these are often official government documents, so they carry a lot of weight and corroborate the operations of a business and how big the business was, given how much they paid in taxes. Tax documents could involve corporate tax filings, or they could also be individual tax filings of the client that show the revenue, costs, and expenses of a business, as would be the case of a sole proprietor. Financial statements of the business are also extremely helpful and could be or could not be part of tax filings. If these documents exist, I would recommend that you include them in the application, as they inform the immigration officer a lot about the nature of the business, the amount of money that came in and came out and went out, the number of employees or the total payroll, and the remuneration received by the individual owner or your client as part of operating that business. If the self-employed person kept timesheets of their work and the hours that they worked per week or for a particular project, I do like to include these as well, and they're particularly common in the case of independent contractors. Similarly, you may have invoices to third parties for goods or services that were provided, and these can be included. In the case of an independent contractor, invoices can demonstrate the compensation that was received for a particular job or project that was declared in the work history. In the case of a business owned by the client, where there were a number of clients, or they provided services or products to a number of people, invoices can show continuity of the operations as well as the nature and size of the company. You may want to include just a selection of invoices from the period of self-employment to make the volume manageable. Proof of payment for invoices rendered as a self-employed person are also very helpful, and these can include checks, deposits to a bank account, wire transfers, amongst others. Contracts can also be included, and these could be the contracts with the company or organization to which the self-employed client provided services to, in the case of an independent contractor, for example, or in the case of a larger business, it could include both contracts with clients, but also with third-party providers. So, for example, contracts with suppliers, a commercial lease of the business, contracts with a firm that provided IT services, just to name a few, and some of these could be included. I also like to include a few letters from third parties that corroborate the work experience declared. If it was the case of an independent contract for a single company, then a letter from that company confirming as much information as possible about the work will suffice. But if it's the case of a client who owned a business with many clients, then you might want to include letters from the business partners, suppliers, vendors, major clients, employees who worked really closely with the client. Those are very helpful. And maybe a letter from the company's accountant, if there was one. You can also include other evidence such as printouts from the business website, social media accounts, online reviews, awards earned by the business, and many others. At the end of the day, I want to prove a number of key elements relating to my client's work experience. And these are the exact dates of self-employed work, the title or position held by my client in this business, hours of work per week, the compensation received by the client. This could be a per hour rate, a fixed pay per project, or a salary or dividends earned from the company that they owned, the benefits received from the company, if applicable, and the main duties involved in this position. This obviously is a crucial element, and they must match the NOC or National Occupational Classification Code that was declared in the client's application. Now, some of the documents that I listed before may confirm only one or a couple of these elements, so that is why it's important to have a collection of documents. Finally, there's always a document that I like to include with the evidence of self-employment, and it's a sworn affidavit from the client that summarizes all of the elements that I just mentioned. I start with this document in the application because it's a good summary of the client's self-employment and may fill any gaps that the other documents may have left. But you have to be careful because an affidavit alone is not sufficient, as it is self-serving. At the end of the day, is the client's word alone, and that's why I suggest exploring all other options to prove that, to confirm your client's experience, and these will be documents from a third party. That's not your client. So see what is available. If the documentation is extensive and would include hundreds of pages and possibly thousands of dollars in translation, you must be selective. Include what is most important, most probative of the work experience of the client, and try to include a selection of documents that cover the whole period of self-employment.